You may be seated. Can you get Madam Stenographer? Madam Stenographer.
Your Honor.
Wait a minute, I don't have a stenographer. We're on the record at this time. Very good. Back on the record. I did receive a note from the jury. We are going to be in session on the 11th. Okay? I know it's a holiday that many of you would like to celebrate at the mall. However, it is denied. Call your first witness.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to call Vicki Yost.
Very good. Madam.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good seeing you again. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear affirm testimony about in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth of you God?
I do, Your Honor.
Please be seated, madam. You may proceed, Counselor Long. Now, before we start, I indicated to you the defense does not have to put on a case. They don't have a verdict. But at this time, Mr. Melendez, Officer Melendez, through his attorney, Jim Thomas, chooses to present witnesses at this time. And now we will hear from his witnesses. You may proceed.
Judge, there was an instruction that I'd asked to be given relating to the use of reasonable force. Will you give it at this time?
No. Ask the questions. We'll deal with that later. Ultimately, based on what is presented, if the court believes that there are facts to support it, I will give it. But not at this juncture. It's premature. Go ahead.
Will you please state your name for the record?
Vonda Evans. No, just kidding.
Have you been sworn?
Vicki Yost.
And then what is your occupation?
Retired law enforcement.
At all relevant times.
Can you pull that microphone?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Thank you so much. It's been a while, so I know you're not used to it, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
At all relevant times in this instance, were you in fact the chief of police at Inkster Police Post?
Yes, I was.
And how long were you at Inkster?
From August 4th of 2014 till April 22nd of 2015.
And where were you employed before Inkster as the police chief?
I was a deputy chief in the City of Detroit Police Department.
And how many deputy chiefs are there in the entire city of Detroit?
At the time, there were 3.
And as I take it, the deputy chief is second in command?
There's an assistant chief who was second in command, sir.
Okay.
But you're pretty up there, high up there, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Do you know Bill Melendez?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Bill Melendez?
I know him as an officer in Detroit, and I also know him as an officer in Inkster.
Did he work for you at or about January 28th, 2015?
1952. What'd you say? I'm going to give you a break. Time out. Give Mr. Thomas a time out. Go ahead. Time in.
2015.
Yes, he was employed by Inkster.
And what was his job?
Patrol officer.
And can you give the jury an idea of what it is that patrol officers do in the city of Inkster?
Yeah, it varies. They answer calls for service. They also will do proactive patrol. They'll do traffic enforcement as time permits.
What is proactive patrol?
It's basically where the officers go to high crime areas or something driven by crime data. There's something called data-driven crime or law enforcement where you put the cops on the dots, so to speak. Where if you're having an area that has, excuse me, a lot of crime, that you assign the officers to work patrol in those areas.
On this date, were you using putting the cops on the dots?
I like that. Cops on the dots. I like that.
Yes.
Is that a term I heard?
Yeah, it is a term of art, yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
And the term relates to the statistical analysis of where it is a crime is likely to happen or has happened in the past.
It's based on data-driven analysis, so you look at the data, you look at the crime data as to where it's occurring, what type of crime it is, what days of week, what times of day, things like that, and you assign officers for visibility and patrol in those areas.
Let me ask a question. How do you get that information? What's it based upon?
It's based on crime analysis reports.
How many times people make calls? And what is the data based on?
It's based on reported crimes
Okay.
and calls for service.
Okay, very good. So then you put it all together and say, figure out what area of the city needs more officers. Is that correct? Based on the number of calls?
Correct.
Or arrests?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
And the key is then to assign an officer to an area that you think is a potential for crime.
Yes.
A place that has been.
So if it's a dot, it needs a cop.
Ideally, it's sometimes resource-driven, and you don't have cops to put on every dot, but yes, we try.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about a dot. I mean, it's all cute and everything. People get hurt on dots.
They do.
Officers are in trouble and maybe have a potential for being injured on dots.
Yes, as citizens do as well.
All right. We've heard Lieutenant Powell talk about Michigan Avenue. The area where the budget in is, are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
Were you familiar with it before the investigation?
Yes, I was.
And certainly you were familiar with it after the investigation.
Yes.
All right. Now, before the investigation, at or about January 28th of 2015, tell me what your view was of this particular dot, and that is the area of the budget in on Michigan Avenue.
Her view of the dot isn't relevant.
Based on the statistical analysis that you
That's relevant.
The location in the previous 9 months had 31 notes in Clemis, varying calls for service that ranged from weapons, narcotics, disorderly conduct, and property crimes.
Was it an area that you were concerned with on January 28th as it relates to the potential for future crime?
Yes.
Was it did you dispatch Chief, did you dispatch Mr. Melendez to go to that particular area?
Chief?
Chief. She is the chief.
Okay, but you don't dispatch anybody, do you?
No, I do not.
All right. Did you identify that to your police officers, including Mr. Melendez?
I did identify the location prior to that night and said it was a location to be given special attention.
All right. Now, when an officer gives something special attention, what are the types of investigative tools that they have at their disposal to do so?
Well, obviously the police visibility is the biggest deterrent to crime. Secondly, they could do traffic enforcement, they could do street investigations if they were appropriate, and obviously traffic enforcement, I'll go back to that.
Let me ask this question to you because you brought out a good point. You said you instructed the officers. That's a little different than in a bigger city, is that correct?
Yes, and the city of Inkster had 25 officers, I believe, at the time, including me.
Okay, so when you instructed them, tell us what that protocol is. Tell us what you do.
Well, I talked to them about crime. I talked to the officers
So you as a chief,
regularly,
you
yes.
actually do that.
Yes.
Unlike, say, Detroit, they don't do that. They just have, the command will tell the officers.
The chain of command is shortened in Inkster due to the size.
So what do you do? Tell us what you did.
So when I get reports and I see areas that are having issues, I would look at the data. I would talk to the officers about the data. I would talk to the state police about the data because state police also has a road patrol presence in Inkster. And I would try to get the deployment of the officers or during their free time for the officers to focus on those areas we were having trouble.
Okay, go ahead. So you actually did it yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
And, when you were working for the city of Detroit, you had how many people working under you?
Over 1,000.
So, practically speaking, it wouldn't have been practical to do that, but you do it in Inkster.
I did do it in Inkster,
Do you
yes.
consider that area of Inkster to be high crime?
Yes.
Located where the Budget Hotel is?
That's how I took the question. It was related to the...
To the Budget Hotel?
What budget? Yeah, what type of crime goes on in the Budget Hotel?
Like I said, the previous 9 months we had 31 calls for service ranging from weapons reports, weapons runs, narcotics, disorderly conduct. In addition to that, we had complaints from the Hotel Association. We were having complaints from them, and I had a meeting with them regarding some of the activity as well.
Now, as a police officer who's investigating that type of activity, would a surveillance technique be appropriate?
Yes.
Right? In this case, obviously, you viewed what happened, but independent of your view, would setting up on the Budget Inn across the street be a reasonable police technique to use in terms of ferreting out the crime that you just described?
Observation skills are always a reasonable technique in law enforcement.
And so, marked vehicle, plainly marked vehicle, across the street, and some distance away.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question on that.
Yeah, I'd like to know who's testified.
It would be helpful. Mr. Thomas?
You understand you're testifying, correct?
Yes, I
You're
do.
under oath.
Yes, I am.
And I want to ask you, tell us how a surveillance should have been done in this instance.
In this instance, I'm not aware of all the information that Officer Melendez had when he started the surveillance. So I'd be assuming,
So that's not proper.
All right, so let me ask you, proper to have binoculars?
yes,
Proper to be setting up with somebody else in the car?
yes,
Would you expect that the officer would be talking to the other officer and communicating what it is that he sees?
with the other officer in the car?
Yeah.
Yes,
And that the other officer in the car would also be trying to see what it is that he could see?
yes,
We talked a little bit about video and video cameras, having a video on. A video is a snapshot of a particular perspective, but police officers, do they have a larger perspective than what's in the video?
what's captured on the video is relative in size and scope. It doesn't capture what the officer necessarily.
And the video in the car doesn't move left to right, it just goes straight forward as the car is.
Correct.
And would you expect an officer who's doing surveillance to use binoculars?
If they felt it were necessary, yes, I don't see that as problematic.
Okay. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the policy and procedures at Inkster. Are you aware of the policies and procedure at the Inkster Police Department?
Most of them, yes.
At the time of the incident.
Certainly, were you aware of them at the time of the incident?
All of them?
Well, let's talk. I got to limit this because I want to get out of here before 5 o'clock. I want to talk about the policies and procedures as it relates to probable cause to arrest, to the use of force, and go into those areas. Are you familiar with the policies and procedures that were employed in Inkster relating to those two things?
Yes.
And did you give training as it relates to probable cause to arrest to the Inkster Police Department?
Did I specifically?
Yes.
Not to my recollection.
Were you aware that training occurred while you were the chief relating to the arrest of a person in a traffic stop?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I forgot we did do some work outside.
Okay. And then I
It's
want
been
to
a while,
talk.
I'll allow it.
Sorry.
Go ahead. You can lead her a little.
We had some situational training
Okay.
that involved probable cause and traffic stops and safety on traffic stops.
All right. Was Officer Melendez a part of that?
Yes, he was.
And what about the use of force? Was there training in the use of force at Inkster before January 28, 2015 that you're aware of?
I know we did some with the qualifications when they recertified with their firearms.
Okay. But that's firearms training, that's not the use of physical force, or is it?
It normally covers firearms, the lethal use of force, and like when to shoot scenarios.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask that we cue up the video and we drop the lights and we go to
Deputy Beatty?
I want to go to 2148.
Oh, boy.
20, if you can.
I'm going to start 21, 48, 10.
Chief, take a look at the vehicles traveling from left to right. That's eastbound on Michigan Avenue, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. This is a perspective from Officer Melendez's vehicle. Can we pause for a second? All out the time.
Was it 21, 48, 29?
Let's go to 21, 48, 20, please.
I can see. This is okay.
21, 48, 20. Play.
and pause at 21:48:27, if you can.
It's not gonna be right. Twenty-one, 48, 27.
Okay. Now, you see Officer Melendez's vehicle, is that correct?
I'm assuming that's where the camera angle is coming from, is that this is the videotape from Officer Melendez's vehicle.
And it is, and it's been admitted into evidence as Exhibit 1, I believe, but that's pretty dark. You can't see it as clearly as you can see it on the television. And now it's a little bit better. At this point, you see that the vehicle is stationary and you see the view from the camera. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at this time, do you see any vehicles in that picture?
There's a vehicle on the north side. I can't make out make or model. It appears to be traveling eastbound.
Okay. Would you go to 21:48, a little bit before this, please? And then, officer, I'm going to ask you to step down and take a look at the TV screen. It's a little bit more.
Be careful.
Yeah, Judge?
Matt.
Is that as big as it can get?
No, we're just gonna start at 21, 48, 04.
21:48:04, and I want you to pay careful attention to the traffic that is going westbound, which would be from right to left, and tell me whether or not you see a light-colored vehicle in that picture. Are you ready?
Explain.
In that traffic, were you able to discern that?
On both the north and the south side, you could make out vehicle colors better.
Did you see a vehicle that was light-colored passing from east to west? At that time frame? In that
So traveling eastbound?
No, westbound.
Okay, that was confusing me. Yes, I did.
Okay, now, I want you to watch what happens to the picture after that.
For the record, I stopped at 21, 48, 39. I'm gonna go back a little.
And where are you now?
21, 48, 32.
And what do you see?
This one.
And I'm talking about vehicle movement. Did you happen to see anything at that time? Stop, please.
I'd like to see it again over there if I can.
Okay, stopped at 21, 48, 46.
Oh,
He's starting at 21, 48, 29.
what I'm looking for you to alert to is what, if any, movement you are able to determine of the police car based on the video that you're seeing. Having looked at that, stop, please.
Stopped at 21, 48, 41.
What did you see?
The police car rolled up. It looked like it moved forward, rolled forward.
In terms of an investigative purpose, are you willing to discuss what possibly could be going on with the movement of that vehicle at that time?
I'm going to object to what possibly happened in somebody else's mind.
Sustained.
All right. Is it true that the vehicle moved forward?
Yes.
Is it true that it moved forward? By moving forward, it might have a better ability to view what it was that it was there to be seen on Michigan Avenue.
Once again, I want to know who's testifying. This is all
Same.
been leading.
Well, I'm leading him. I'm leading him.
the lights on?
But I'll
You cut the lights off. Can we cut the
Well,
lights off?
Judge, no, I'd like to go to my next area.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
All right. Can we go to 214850?
214851.
That's fine,
Okay.
please. Where is the vehicle at this time? Is it in the same position that it was in before?
It appears to be.
All right. Okay. Let's do 215550.
Stopping at 214938.
All right. What do we see here? And you can call it out as you're looking at it.
Okay. This is
Oh, I'm sorry.
215524.
Okay. Is this facing westbound on Michigan Avenue, Chief?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay, you see the sign up there that says Inkster City Limits?
Yes.
Okay. You know that
That would be eastbound then.
eastbound? Which way is 275?
East. I mean west, I'm sorry. You're right. I apologize.
Let's run it from here, but while we're running it, I'd like to ask you some questions. From this position, what is the view?
Broadly, it looks like Michigan Avenue.
Okay, you see cars passing, then in front of the vehicle, and passing and coming towards the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have the ability to see down the street?
Not at this angle, no.
Okay. At this point, what do you see and what is the time?
I don't see the time up. It is 21:55:57. The scout car is moving.
Okay. At this point, do you see traffic in front of the scout car?
There appears to be a car in the distance, yes.
Okay. You happen to see a blinking light on the right-hand side just now?
Yes, and brake lights as well.
This is proceeding westbound on Michigan Avenue. It's gone past the Budget Inn. Would you agree?
Yes.
Approaching Fairbairn. Would you agree?
I'm not familiar with.
Who's testifying?
Sustain. Refresh.
All right, stop here, please.
Oh.
Stop.
Stop at 215635.
Okay. You tell me. You tell the jury what street this is.
From that view, I don't know.
You saw the car turn right off of Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
You've reviewed this tape on many occasions.
Yes.
What street is it? Do you know?
Without looking at my notes, no, I do not.
All right, well, it's too dark to do that, so we'll leave it at this. What I would like to ask you is whether or not at this point that there's any vehicle that you can readily see in this picture.
And this one, no.
Okay. Now, can we blow it up a little bit? Okay, and can we now run the tape, and I want you to look, before we run it, towards the street sign on almost the middle of the camera, on the left-hand side.
Okay.
As the car turns, do you see any other vehicles that are moving? Stop.
There's one in front, yes.
Before the turn, and without looking really closely, did you see any vehicle traffic coming from the left?
No.
Did Did you see any other traffic anywhere else except for this one car?
No.
Alex, I'd like you to go back to just before the turn.
For the record, we stopped at 21:56:50.
Okay? And I want you to go to 21:56 even. All right? I want you to proceed, but then as the car turns, I want you to stop.
I'll be starting at 21:56:02.
Okay? Stop. Now, Chief, what time did we stop at?
21:56:33.
Okay. What I want you to pay attention to is whether or not there is any traffic that is traveling at or near that sign that I showed you just previously.
Okay.
Okay? Can we make it bigger?
Okay, light first.
And can we... No traffic in front, correct?
Correct.
No traffic on the left except for the one vehicle. Is that right?
That's all I see, yes.
Okay. You see any black pickups in the area?
There was a pickup on the right that they just passed.
It was,
Parked.
no, that was parked. I'm talking about moving.
No.
Any other vehicles other than what you already saw? Stop.
No. Well, now the crossing vehicle's in front.
If we could just stop there. Did you just see a vehicle commit any form of a traffic infraction?
It was a rolling stop.
Okay. Did you see
So disregard a stop sign.
that traffic that was traveling to the left and to the right of that vehicle?
There was somebody going north and south.
Can we have an identification of time if we don't already?
Same.
21:57:12.
Okay. And ma'am, at this point, would there be a basis upon which to stop the vehicle that you see in that picture?
Yes.
And what would be that basis?
Disregard a stop sign.
And let's continue, please. Are the lights activated yet? That wasn't for you.
They don't appear to be. Oh, yeah, they might be.
Stop. I'd like to know the time of that.
Sustain. What time?
Right here is 21:57:36.
And it does not look like they are activated at that point.
Okay. Continue if I may. See the brakes?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you just see at the stop sign?
And yet it appeared to be a rolling stop.
Okay, ma'am, did you have any opinion based on what you saw as to how far into the intersection that car went?
It was, now the lights are on. How far in the intersection?
Yeah.
Probably a couple feet.
Essentially close harm to other traffic?
Yes.
You see any furtive movement at all on this car at any time?
Well, the brakes are coming off and on. And here, at this point, it pulls to the curb, kind of slows down like it's going to stop, and then pulls back off.
See the lighting there?
What lighting, sir?
The street lighting?
Yes.
See that swerve just now?
Yes.
Once again, who's testifying?
Sustain.
What do you see?
What do I see now?
Stop. What did you see in terms of the direction of the car going from left to the right, if anything?
No, there are instances where like I said, where the brakes were hit, were deployed, and then you can see the brake lights activate. There was also a time when the car started to pull towards the curb as though it was going to stop, and then it kind of came back out a couple feet back into the moving lane of traffic. Brake lights came back on, and then it eventually stops. But there is some maneuvering to the right side where you would think it was going to stop at first, and then it doesn't.
For the record, we stopped at 21:58:40.
Okay. Did you notice anything about the way that it stopped?
It seemed to be abrupt.
Do you have did you have any time compiled as to how long it took for him to pull over after the lights were activated?
Yes.
And how long did it take for that vehicle to pull over after the lights had been activated?
The administrative investigation revealed 44 seconds.
You conducted an investigation based on a use of force report that had been made?
I directed my sergeant to conduct it, and I eventually also endorsed or over-endorsed him.
All right.
What's that mean?
Meaning the administrative investigation was to determine if any policies or procedures were violated and come to a conclusion. As chief of police, I was not happy with that conclusion, and I over-endorsed it.
Okay, very good. So that meant that you could veto it,
I can over-endorse it, yes.
like the President of the United States or something?
I don't think it's quite that same, but
Okay, very good.
More like Fidel Castro,
Come on!
because she's the chief judge.
Okay, very good. Okay, good.
Now, all kidding aside, and without getting into what your endorsement was, maybe we will, maybe we won't, depending on what the judge rules. But I want to talk about what it is that a reasonable police officer would see at this point.
a reasonable police officer would see the time delay in the pulling over, the going to the right as if they're going to pull over, and then it doesn't. And it would give cause for concern. It would give cause to a certain high level of alertness. During those times, it's often a safety issue for officers where that time delay is often a time for someone to conceal and or gather something.
What, if any, relevance was it from the car going from, as you said, left to right or right to left?
My professional experience has taught me that sometimes cars do dip to the right if someone is trying to reach under or reach towards the floorboard on the passenger side.
And is there a potential for danger with respect to the reaching to the right or to the, the car moving from the right to left and whatever that assumption is that you made?
Well, the indication would be that it's an opportunity for somebody to either reach for a firearm, discard narcotics, or do any number of things.
And so, you said high level of alertness. High level of alertness for what?
Officer safety. There's an inherent danger. It's a flag that would be up on the officer on a traffic stop.
At that point, what would a reasonable officer then do?
The reasonable officer would exit their car cautiously, using good firearms protocols, and probably be at a tactical ready. Sorry, now it's too close.
All right. Well, let's go forward then and see what the video shows. You've seen this before, I know. Stop. All right, what did we just see?
You see Officer Melendez approaching the vehicle with his weapon unholstered. When the door opens, you see him acquiring a target.
Okay, appropriate behavior?
Yes.
Reasonable for an officer to have his gun at the ready?
Given the totality of the circumstances he had and the information he had at that time, yes.
Okay, now, what do we see, and I guess we should just play it for a few more seconds, and I'll ask you what it is that you see. What time are we at right now?
21:58:47.
Okay, please go forward. Stop. All right, what did you just see?
Well, Officer Melendez went to a tactical ready position as auxiliary officer Zielinski approached the driver's door.
Okay.
At one point I could see the driver's left hand, but I couldn't see it right now because it's
it's blocked by
Blocked.
Zelinski, but during the time that you did see it, did you see two hands going out the door to show that he had nothing in his hands?
I only saw his left hand.
And his left hand was on the door, and at this point, his feet are not on the ground, are they? Can you see?
Can I look at that screen?
You may.
Have you looked at it?
Yes, I have.
Are his feet on the ground yet?
They do not appear to be.
Okay. Now, what we saw was his left hand come out. His right hand was not visible. Is that what you just said?
Correct.
All right. What now does the reasonable officer, what is it that a reasonable officer would do?
They should be giving verbal commands and should have been during their entire approach.
What would the verbal commands be?
I can object as to what happened in this event. There's no audio.
Sustained.
Sustained?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see Officer Melendez with his gun pointed?
Yes,
Potential for danger in this situation as you see it now without hearing the audio?
yes.
And what is the potential for danger?
Again, the 44 seconds it took to pull over, the fact that the car stopped abruptly, and the fact that the driver's door was open.
All right. What do you see Zelinski doing?
He appears to be reaching in the car.
All right. By the way, does he have a skull cap on?
He doesn't appear to now.
Were you aware what the weather was that night?
I believe it was cold.
Can you roll it then for another 5 or 10 seconds, please?
Correct, we stopped at 21:58:53.
Say it nice and loud. 21 what?
58:53.
Thank you. Stop. All right. At that point, what do you see Officer Melendez do?
He brings his firearm back into a different tactical position. It's a way that officers can, it's weapon retention practiced by the officers. You keep it closer to your body so they can't be taken away from you. And as the driver is coming out of the vehicle or being pulled from the vehicle, you see him holster his weapon.
At this point, based on what it is that you've seen, would it be reasonable for the officers to take the person who was in the car to the ground?
Given the totality of the circumstances, again, yes, it would.
And you went through the whole litany of it, I don't need you to do it again. But at this point, still, there was a potential for danger, agreed?
Based on what I've seen, yes.
Okay. Now, can we then move forward? What time are we at?
21:58:59.
Please. All right, stop. All right. At this point, what do you see?
I see Mr. Dent on the ground, Officer Melendez with his arm around his chin and facial area, and Auxiliary Officer Zelinski attempting to secure his arm.
Okay. Why would they want to secure his arms from a reasonable police officer's perspective based on the circumstances that you
To prevent access from a weapon he had not been searched yet.
All right. And of course, do you see him at this point submitting and putting his arms behind his back?
No, I do not.
We've heard the term passive resistance. Would you term that passive resistance?
No, I would not.
Why not?
Because passive resistance involves kind of like dead weight, where you're not actually doing anything to thwart the attempts at arrest. In this scenario, it's not dead weight. It's the fact that he's refusing strenuous opportunity to try to pull his arm to the rear of the...
What's the potential for danger with that?
Again, you have a subject in the totality of the circumstances who had taken the time to pull over. The car stopped abruptly. He exited the... and then you get to this point in the video, and the officers haven't searched him, so there's still a danger potentially for the officers.
Okay. What happens if he gets free?
It could be a foot chase. It could be a different type of struggle or altercation.
What happens if he gets back into the car and drives away?
It could be a vehicle pursuit.
Are those all realistic possibilities?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. I think we're getting a little far afield on
Same.
Judge, we're talking
speculation.
about what a reasonable officer
Oh,
would perceive.
just ask that question,
All
okay?
right. Would a reasonable officer worry about that?
At this point, you would be trying, yes, they would, and they would be trying to control the subject.
Now, how long, if you know, was it that Mr. Dent struggled with them before he was actually subdued?
I believe it was 1 minute and 31 seconds.
We're going to run through this now, and I want you to take a look at Officer Melendez's actions at or about Mr. Dent's head. And I would like, at this point, to have you, if you could, describe what it is that he's doing before we start, in the picture that we see.
It looks like he's trying to put him in a head restraint.
Okay. What is a head restraint?
It would be something used to control the subject. So in this case, Mr. Dent, it would be a technique used to control him.
Okay, at this point, do you see Mr. Dent lying flat on his stomach with his arms behind his back?
No, he's actually on his right side.
And does that appear as if he's submitting to the actions of the police officers at that time?
No, it does not.
Okay. Now, take a look at what happens in the next 5 seconds before the striking.
For the record, we're at 21:59:05.
Thank you. Okay, hold that. All right. What is Officer Zielinowski doing at this point?
It looks like he's trying to use a technique to get his arm behind his back.
Is that a straight arm technique?
Well, the takedown would be a straight arm bar takedown when he was pulled from the vehicle. That technique would be using force and leverage in certain spots like the shoulders to try to compel his arm to the rear.
Did it appear to you as if the straight arm takedown was successful in controlling his left arm?
No, and it wasn't successful. Never mind. No.
Okay. Now, I think we should take it back just a bit because the striking started. Okay.
Oh boy.
It's 21:58:57.
Now, you did your investigation, and based on your investigation, what did you look at?
Your Honor, can we approach for 1
I'm
second?
not going
Yes.
to go into what it was said.
Okay, fine.
That's hearsay. You did your investigation. There were reports that were generated that you reviewed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move towards this. By the way, there were reports from Officer Melendez. Is that right?
Yes.
Does Officer Zielinowski do reports?
No.
Why is that?
It's a policy failure of IPD.
That's probably going to change at some point. Would you agree?
I made that recommendation, yes.
Okay, but at the time, he wasn't required to do a report.
No.
But the video's there to plainly be seen, right?
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Dent's hand break free from Officer Zielinowski as he went to the ground?
Can we replay it again?
Just a little bit. What do you see there?
It looks like a head restraint. Now Officer Melendez is striking Mr. Dent, and Auxiliary Officer Zielinowski is trying to get his left hand behind his back.
Okay. Did you see Officer Zielinowski move towards his right shoulder at one point?
I'm not sure which point you're
All
talking.
right. At this point, does he get the handcuff on Mr. Dent's hand?
It appears there's a handcuff on, but
And what does Mr. Dent do?
it appears that he's pulling away.
And then what do you see happening? Other officers arrive?
Other officers are arriving.
Whose back is to us?
That appears to be Sergeant Kreitzer.
Okay. Stop.
That was at 21:59:41.
Did you see Officer Melendez strike Mr. Dent in the head?
Yes.
Was it at a time that Mr. Dent was resisting?
Yes.
Was it at a time that Mr. Dent's mouth was near his left arm?
Yes.
Did you see Officer Melendez stop striking him in the head?
Yes.
After he stopped striking him in the head, what, if anything, did Mr. Dent do?
Continue to resist.
And is continuing to resist. Are all those factors that you're talking to me about, do all those still come into play? If he gets away, what happens if he gets to the car? Is anybody else going to be in danger? Are the police officers in danger? Do all of those factors come into play?
I'm going to object. None of those things happen.
Irrespective, I'll allow it overall.
You're a police officer, right?
Yes.
You're on the street, right?
Yes.
So the guy's got a gun, and he points at you, and for some reason he fumbles and drops it. Are you going to worry any less about a gun?
Not if it's within his wingspan or area of control.
Is a reasonable police officer going to worry any less about the potential for escape or danger to himself or others just because it didn't happen?
I don't understand the question.
The prosecutor objected, saying, well, those things didn't happen, so it must not have been in a reasonable officer's mind. I want to go into the, what is a reasonable police officer, what is he worried about at the time that he's struggling with somebody out on the street?
A reasonable officer at this point would be worried about the fact that, again, he had not been searched, he's resisting arrest, and the fact that he could have been armed.
Okay.
And until he was searched, you wouldn't know.
Certainly you see him moving his hands underneath his body.
Yes.
What, if any, potential for danger is that?
It depends where he would be. It's an opportunity to grab at something that would be concealed, whether it be a knife or a firearm. That could pose a danger to the officer.
I didn't ask you this question, but the way that the door opens, when a police officer approaches a car, what is it that generally police officers expect to have happen?
Normally, the person in the traffic stop would roll down the window and wait for the officer to approach and make a request.
That is not what happened in this case.
No.
All right.
It's unusual for people who are stopped to open the door.
Now, where are we now in the video?
21:59:49.
And can we please move forward now until Mr. Dent is picked up off the ground? No. I wanted to go from where we were. I'm sorry. Can we move forward? All right, are we ready?
Okay,
Where are you?
we're gonna start 21:59:37.
Okay, at this point, we see Sergeant Kreitzer with his back to us.
It appears to be yes.
Go ahead. Stop here. Where are we?
21:59:46.
After Officer Melendez has stopped hitting Mr. Dent in the head, was there a period of time before Officer Kreitzer engages?
Sergeant Kreitzer, yes.
Sergeant Kreitzer has something in his left hand, does he not?
Yes.
Can you describe to the jury what a taser is?
It basically is an electronic device that sends an electronic signal through the body that normally helps in terms of arresting someone and stopping their resistance, but not always.
Would you consider Officer Melendez stopping hitting Mr. Dent in the head as a de-escalation?
Yes.
Would you consider then Sergeant Kreitzer's use of taser a step up in the continuum of things to subdue Mr. Dent?
It was a step up in the force continuum, and yes, it was an escalation.
So I started to say it, but I wanted to hear it from you. Will you tell the jury what the use of force continuum is?
It basically covers everything from an officer's physical presence to verbal commands and goes all the way up to lethal force, and it kind of goes over the options officers have in that very large continuum. Is that good enough, or you want me to go further? It weighs the subject's actions and the officer's response.
And of course, the subject's actions and the officer's perceptions are those which he sees and he feels at the time that the force occurs.
The evaluation of force is based on what a reasonable officer would do, based on what the officer knew at the time.
All right. Now, is the use of force continuum a part of the policy and procedures for the Inkster Police Department?
I believe it is.
And is the use of force continuum something that was trained to Detroit police officers under your watch and to you as a Detroit police officer when you started?
Yes.
Okay. In a sense, it justifies police officers' actions based on what a
I'm going to
reasonable person
object to
would do.
that. Nothing justifies the actions if they're unjustified.
Well, I'll tell you what, the jury's going to talk about.
Excuse me, rephrase that question.
Rather than argue, the use of force continuum is something that police officers are allowed to do at Inkster.
I'm going to object to that. What they're allowed to do is not dictated by some policy. It's by the law and what this jury determines.
Okay, counsel, rephrase. Overrule, I'm allowed, go ahead. Rephrase, just answer the question again.
Well, you told us what the use of force continuum is, right?
Yes.
Okay. In this instance, can you go through the use of force continuum?
You don't necessarily have to. In any instance, you can start at the very lowest level of force and have to escalate to the very highest level of force. So in the broad sense, you normally work your way slowly up or down, but there can be instances where an officer would have to go from basically his physical presence and verbal commands to something lethal
Okay.
based on the subject's actions.
And in a use of force continuum, if it is presented that there's danger to somebody's life, you can use lethal force, correct?
Lethal force is authorized if there is a danger to someone, an immediate threat to someone's life.
Or yourself.
Yes.
Now, this isn't lethal force, is it, in this case?
I don't believe so.
And lethal force is that you kill someone,
You mean,
take their life, is that correct?
It's force that could be expected to result in death or something like that. Death.
Okay,
It doesn't mean it has to actually succeed in that. It's just something that would be expected to cause death.
okay, such as shooting a person, etc.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
so when we see Officer Melendez point his weapon and put it back into his holster, is that an escalation or a de-escalation?
That's a de-escalation.
When we see Mr. Dent go to the ground and refuse to be handcuffed, is that something that
I'm
would
going to
be...
object to his refusal.
Sustain, counsel, you can only say what is saw.
Did you see him get handcuffed?
Excuse me, what is depicted on the video, okay? Don't conclude.
Well,
what
is
he
it
was
an
doing.
unfair characterization then for me to say that for almost a 2-minute period of time, he did not get handcuffed?
Okay, very good. Counsel, rephrase the question, okay?
All right. Ma'am, did you see a period of time within which Mr. Dent was taken to the ground and that time frame took to get him handcuffed?
Yes.
Did you see him act voluntarily to submit his hands for handcuffing?
And did not see him submit to an arrest.
What did you see?
That the officers had to struggle to put him in custody.
What did you see as it relates to him submitting to handcuffing?
I did not see him comply and either put his hands behind his back for handcuffing.
Okay. When a person does not submit or comply, as you say, to handcuffing, what force can be used in order to get him to do so?
It depends on the level of resistance that the subject is.
And considering the level of resistance, would you consider the size of the person?
Yes.
Would you consider the duration of his refusal to have his hands cuffed?
Yes.
Would you see whether or not he in any way
We
would...
got the lights on.
Judge, I'm running through this video. I wanna do this piece by piece in the video.
So we can't.
You want me to stop?
Let's cut the lights on for a minute, because I'm about to just release the jurors, but I'm gonna allow you to continue your question. Go ahead.
All right,
Cut the lights on.
I need 5 minutes.
All right, go ahead. No, go ask the question. You were asking, and I interrupted you.
We're talking about what it is that you would consider that would justify an escalation. And certainly, we've been through it almost more than we need to. If a person physically assaults a police officer, do they have a right then to step up the use of force in the use of force continuum?
That's up to the jury, how much.
Sustain.
How much?
Right, rephrase.
If somebody bit somebody, would they be justified in hitting them in the head?
I'm gonna object, there's
Sustain.
no evidence that occurred.
Well, what, I gotta call her back?
We have to do what's necessary.
He knows what's in the reports.
Counsel.
Well, that's clearly what he's been trying to do all along.
Counsel, ask the question.
Or danger, once the handcuff is on Mr. Dent's left hand, if it breaks free.
Well, the handcuffs are a weapon at that point. If it were to be swung, it can cause serious harm or injury to the officers, anybody else at the scene, and including Mr. Dent himself, to be honest.
You've looked at this tape, right?
Yes.
You've seen the position of Officer Melendez's arm as it relates to Mr. Dent.
Yes.
How many times have you seen the video?
Dozens.
What is the difference between a head restraint and a chokehold?
A chokehold would have been under the chin and trying to cut off the airway or the blood supply. A head restraint is normally not under one's neck, it's across the chin.
If a person has a chokehold employed, what, if anything, physically would you expect to see?
Regarding the person to whom the chokehold is applied,
Right.
you would expect to see them to be subdued or cease their resistance or slowly cease their resistance.
When is it that Mr. Dent ceased his resistance in this case?
After he was tased and then kicked twice by...
Inkster policy prohibits the use of a chokehold, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
You've reviewed the tape?
Yes, I have.
Was that a chokehold?
No, it was not.
I'll offer her for cross.
At this time, we're going to stop. As you can well imagine, the examination of retired Chief of Police Vicki Yost is going to take some time. So opposed to us going over time limit today, I'll see you promptly at 9:30. As I've indicated, we've done a lot. We're moving along very quickly in this particular matter, and I do foresee that there's a good chance, at least not maybe this week, but next week, early next week, we should be wrapping this matter up. All rise for the jury. Remember,